Good afternoon from Tucson. Looks like I'm talking to myself. Hopefully there'll be a few of you join. YouTube's letting me know I'm live. This will be the third live stream that I've done. And hopefully there'll be somebody, some of you join. If not, I will cut it after like 15 minutes if I don't get anybody on. There's not a lot to talk about. With me just talking to myself. It's interesting because I get several questions during the week on videos, just different things about maybe fixing something, or a lot of the things I get from folks are related to their experiences with a particular piece of gear that was just like the one or very similar to the one that I did the review on. I think my very first live stream, it was a few minutes before somebody joined, and it was probably just one or two people on that first one. The last one was pretty good, but I did offer a kind of a raffle prize. This time I did not pursue that. It looks like somebody has joined. If you've joined, let me know where you're from, what part of the country or world. If you got a question, that would be nice, or a question. Nope, they left. Yeah, it has a little counter that tells me how long I've been on the air and how many people are watching. So whoever tuned in left, and looks like somebody came back. Hopefully you have a question or a comment about something. Maybe not. I just finished measuring an amplifier for an upcoming review. I have to listen to it and then do a little video on it, but I'm hoping to have that done out in a month or two. I need to get it back to the guy. He lives up in Phoenix, which, if you're not familiar, it's about 120 miles or so away from where I live. So we have to rendezvous at some point, but I wanted to get him his amplifier back. And most of the stuff I get is from friends or acquaintances that have gear that's either broken or they think it would make for a good video. So that's kind of how I get my gear. I have obviously some of my own gear as well, and I've used most of that in videos. There's probably 3 pieces I'm thinking that I haven't done reviews on, one of them being a pair of speakers, actually 2 pair of speakers. I have some Bose 901s that I'm debating doing a review. There's been a lot of reviews, only one where they really did measurements, and he did a really good job on that, but I may end up doing a review on the Bose 901s. They're Series 6s with the equalizer and all that. It's a fair amount of work because you got to tie in the equalizer to the measurements and all that, but I may do that at some point. It looks like I got a few people. You can let me know where you're from. I'm curious what part of the world or country. There's viewers apparently across the pond, as they say. And most of the viewers for the channel are here in the U.S. Yeah, I don't see any comments so far. So you're just listening to me ramble on. That surely can't be very exciting. I think the next time I do a review, I'll try to get a piece of gear donated by Fozzie or maybe Neo Epo. Reach out to them and get a gear that you can enter a drawing. That's what happened last time. They ended up sending it. I didn't have anything to do with that. Anyway, just me talking. I tells me there's one person out there, so maybe they can't really talk. They're at work or something. But it's been going on almost 6 minutes here. Not real exciting if I'm just rattling on. The other thing that I may do in the future is do another A/B test with something a little bit different method of doing it. And I'm hoping to do that maybe in the fall with the group of Tucson folks, and maybe some Phoenix folks will come up for that. And those are always fun events. There's usually food and drink and just people liking to talk audio. And then my friend Richard, who's usually the host, has a really neat environment for all that stuff with a lot of different gear and records and stuff you're just not going to run into and get a chance to listen to. But that's a future endeavor. Like I said, probably at the end of the summer, I'm trying to get it worked out with some speakers from a distributor. They're Fennell speakers, and they would be nice to use. They're like an electrostatic speaker. I've heard them before. I would like to hear them in a different environment, but they're very revealing speakers, so that would be a fun one to use for the AV test. So that's kind of where that's at. I'm going to drink a cup of coffee here. So please don't mind my manners if I do that. Oh yeah, I can see it's actually a little special coffee cup. It's a Macintosh MKit 30 amplifier that I have, and I photographed it and put it on a coffee mug. It's kind of cool. So there's not a lot of interaction. We're at almost 8 minutes. Oops, somebody left. Now I'm showing more people are back. I really would like to get a question so I could feel useful somehow. It's not very fun just chatting by yourself. It's supposed to show me questions over on the side of my screen here, but I don't see anything going on. So I'm hoping that I will get some folks. Yeah, on and off. We'll go for another. Somebody liked it. I really would like a question. I had a couple this morning on some, was it Creek Audio preamp, or rather it was an integrated amp that the guy had a question on. And I don't see any questions popping up yet. And we're at another 10 minutes, so we'll go a little bit longer. Hopefully I will get a question from somebody. The episode that's coming out tomorrow is a little bit different for me, kind of a little project thing. And I'm curious what kind of comments people will leave on that. It's a little bit different. And anyway, that's an interesting video. I hope that people will enjoy that one. And there'll be measurements, of course, in it, but it's kind of a little project that I took upon myself, and it was a different way to do a repair. We'll just leave it at that. So let's see, we're going at 10 minutes, and I haven't had one question unless I'm missing something. I don't see anything coming up yet. Yeah, yeah, I kind of changed the angle of my camera a bit, so the camera's off at a different angle that where I would be looking for my messages on the stuff. But it's yeah, this is kind of my I'll call it my man cave room. So obviously a lot of CDs here, which have all been uh, ripped as WAV files, and they're on my own little NAS server kind of thing. That was a pain to rip all those. But that was just something that I wanted to do so I could listen to them without having to remove them out of the case and all that. Somebody please have a question. It shows me 2 people and still no questions. So, I mean, I'll go for 15 minutes. If I haven't had a question, I'll have to call it a day. I have other things I could be spending my time with. I've got some measurements I need to, like where I do the rise time and phase measurements. Those are actually pictures taken from the oscilloscope. And when I'm done, I use a screen capture program and record the information. So I use I have a microphone and kind of go over those, and then it turns into an MP4 track, which I can upload into the software that I use to work on the videos. That's kind of how that is done. And I just got some data on the amplifier that I tested, which is an Aragon 2004 Mark II. Now I did that's 100 watts per channel. I did an Aragon similar amp, just half the power. I don't know, it was a year ago maybe. They have the V in them. They're kind of a very unique looking thing. So that one I did, and I want to get all the stuff ready for that. I have 3 people, still no questions. The other thing is that I record the videos, and it could be with all the data taken and all that, and it could be months before that video actually gets uploaded to YouTube. It's just kind of when I get stuff in, I try to get it worked on. Sometimes they're broken, or they're for my friends, I want to get them back to them, and so I have like a big backlog of material for videos so far. So that's kind of how it works. So sometimes it's like I'm working on a video that was shot back in October. So it's been several months since the material was actually shot. And it's just kind of how it works with how I do things. Sometimes they'll go out of order. I try to work on the oldest thing first, but occasionally something will come up where I want to push it to the top of the stack. Oh, Dan Stein. Oh, thank you, Dan. Dan's a regular commenter and watcher, and he won one of the prizes. I'm sorry you missed the part where I said maybe next time I'll try to hit somebody up for a prize. I've been working with Fozzie on the video tomorrow. They'll get a shout out. What says hi from the Pacific Northwest? I think you're from Seattle area, if I'm correct, Dan. My son and daughter-in-law live there. What was your position to know so much about measurements? So if you go to episode number 1, the very first video, I talk about my background was in, I'm an electrical engineer, retired electrical engineer, and I worked in RF and microwave measurements, predominantly in hardware and testing stuff. So my natural thing is, testing stuff, microwave devices like amplifiers or phase shifters or just systems that deal with microwave signals is much more complex than audio. They're concerned about phase, and cables do make a difference with stuff that's operating at, I'll say, above 2 gigahertz. And so I worked with a lot of expensive gear, and I was into audio as in college. I guess I was about 1978, probably the bug bit, 77 when I started college. And then it just kind of grew into, a hobby. And then I didn't, through, I would say most of my working career, I wasn't really into audio. I just, had some kind of a stereo. And then as I got a little bit closer to retirement, I started getting into the audio more. And then this just kind of fell, just measuring audio just seemed like a natural thing for me. And I do, I don't, occasionally I get paid from some people for doing repairs. It just kind of depends on the situation, but it's not like a career at all. It's just something I do for fun. That's kind of how I get into it. And as you retire, or when you retire, it's nice to have hobbies and something to keep you busy, so you just don't sit around and watch reruns of Gunsmoke or something. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a time and place to watch it, but I exercise the first part of the day, and then the second part of the day I do, some audio project. It's usually measuring stuff or maybe fixing something. So that's kind of fun. And a friend brought me an old radio, a Marconi radio, like from 1959, actually, that's not working. And he forgot to bring the transformer for 220. So it's a 220 volt radio that came over from England, I guess. And he forgot to bring me the transformer. So I was measuring stuff, and it's like the voltages are way lower than what they should be. He said, "Oh yeah, I forgot the transformer." So I'll work on different things. I don't like working on, a lot of cassettes or, whatever, but old radios, sure. Why not? With tubes in them. And what else? Any other questions? Now, as far as, what I do, I'm a gear guy. I like audio, but to me, music is designed to make your system sound, to test your systems. I mean, I like music, but I'm not a music first. To me, it's more of a way to test or listen to your system and all that. And it's just, you can hear something and then, it sounds good or not. And so I'm more into the audio gear part of it than, trying to get the best absolute room treatment up and all that. I don't really worry about that kind of thing. It's having a cool piece of gear that works well, and your speakers work well with it, that kind of thing. And what I'm learning about measurements, there's some things, and there'll be a tube amp that I'm going to do that measured like crap. I mean, it's like a 5-watt amp, and it sounded just fine with the clips. It just sounded surprisingly good, even though it's THD. It was like, I don't know, like 2% at 5 watts. It was amazingly bad. And it's a newer amp. It's not a vintage amp. And it sounded fine. So sometimes the measurements don't really, tell you the whole story. But they can certainly tell you a lot about the piece of gear. And you learn a lot. Like with Class A stuff, let's say people go, "Oh, I hear a difference within Class A." Every time I've switched, there's certain, maybe it's Yamaha, and you switch into Class A, they actually have a switch that lets you go between Class A or, AB. And when I look at it, the change is so slight in the distortion or harmonics or any of that you just kind of wonder, what might be going on. Or, the other thing is with harmonics, people go, "Oh, tubes have, even harmonics, and they're more pleasant sounding." And a lot of solid state stuff has even harmonics too, where they're the higher harmonics, the second harmonic, or, they're higher. But there doesn't seem to be a correlation with the harmonics from what I can tell. And my own couple experiences with A/B testing, tube versus solid state amplifiers, no difference in sound. Let's see, Dan. Thanks. What's your favorite brands of amplifier? Oh, that's a good question. So I like vintage gear, so I would always look for vintage gear. Of course, they didn't make streamers back then, and I'm using a Wim Mini, uh, and it works rather well. Um, and it, I had a DAC for it. I bought a nice DAC, but I found out when I actually measured the frequency response and what was the other thing? The THD coming out of the Wim Mini, it was fine when I was able to measure it, and it really wasn't that much better than a DAC. As far as turntables, I'm not really somebody that listens a lot. I have two Pioneer turntables. One of them's auto return when it works right. It's an old vintage one, belt drive. It's a I want to say a PL5, PL50 maybe. And then I have another one in this room here. You can't really see it. It's pointed that way. And that's a Pioneer as well, fully manual. And then I have a Sansui linear turntable. I did a review on it, and that works fine. And then I have a Technics linear tracking turntable. I believe it is that they work fine. I don't really have any preference with turntables. Something I like the vintage stuff. The linear tracking is kind of cool. They work well, and I like Macintosh gear. I like Carver gear. My Carver C1 preamp does outstanding for the most part. And the other thing that's the Macintosh, I got a newer Macintosh preamp, and that works great. I think you can't go wrong with Macintosh. And Bryson's a good company. I do have one of their amps, and it's a small amp. Vintage Crown, I think is very good. There's another question. I'll get to that. And speakers, I have some friends, they don't like my La Scalas. They don't like horn speakers so much. And, that's really a personal thing. For me, I have the Kefs 107s, and I have the Wilson Watt3 Puppy 2s. And then I have the Klipsch La Scalas. I have Bose 901s. I have the Klipsch KG2 in my workroom where you see me doing a lot of the video shoots. In the garage, I have another pair that I'm going to do a review on because I believe they're KLH that Costco sold in the 90s. And they actually sound decent. So they look, they're kind of the cheap material for the sides, but they're kind of big and they actually sound okay when I'm out in the garage working on something. I think I'm going to do a review on them. So that's, it's really your own personal preference. The best thing I tell people to do is go listen to speakers. If there's any way you can get them in your home environment and, listen to them in your room, and then find an amplifier or preamp, whatever you want, because, your speakers are your biggest thing. And it's, some people like electrostatic. I'm not as fond of them because I don't like the bass that they usually don't have. The finales that I listened to, they sounded really good, and they were in a huge room, and the bass was lacking, but I think it was because they were in a huge room. So, but I do like my La Scalas. I think are I've had them since 1980, 81, and they're still sound really nice for a lot of music, and stuff with like jazz and male or female vocalists. I think they sound really good. So here's one, Coffin Race. That's an interesting handle on the Proton amp. Oh, okay. The amp is famous. That is the dynamic range. I wonder if you asked me that. I had a question about the dynamic amp or the dynamic range, and the audio gear I use, or the test analyzer I use, it has something called amp dynamics testing. And I tried using that this week on another amp, but it kind of shows you where the gain kind of dies. You put in some pulse of signals at a low level, and then you go up to high level, and you see if the gain dies, and by how much, and that kind of gives you an idea. But the test to do the actual headroom test, I'd have to research that. I may have mentioned in the comment that I will. I mean, there's a spec on how they measured headroom, and I'm not sure how easy that is. It shouldn't be that difficult, but that's kind of where that's at. I did put in the other problem with the amp I was testing was a 250 watt per channel Sound Craftsman amp, and the program that I was using to test the amp dynamics could not put a high enough level to drive the Sound Craftsman amp to where it would start clipping, I guess you would say. And so I'm learning about that test, but there's other things for sure. Yeah, and it's a very short burst of time, that test that I'm trying to use with my Quantasylum analyzer. You kind of get an idea for when you're testing, and you start slowly cranking up the power to see where the distortion starts getting real bad. Usually it's 1% an hour. It just starts, the THD plus noise might start looking, in the 40 minus 40 dB range area. Then that tells you it's not very happy, and you can kind of get an idea. So if it's rated at 100 watts and you go up to maybe 120 and it starts acting up, I guess you could figure out the change in that. But for short durations, I'll look into that. I will promise I will do that. Have you really been enjoying your channel and the various equipment review? Yeah. So the thing is, okay, I did it for a hobby. You had to, and then people started watching, and I always tell people to subscribe. So you have to have a minimum of $100 earned in, ad revenue before YouTube sends you a check. So I get a check a little over $100 every 2 months. So I make 50 or 60 bucks. It's not a thing I do for fun. And then I just bought a better signal generator the other week, which cost probably close to $100, maybe a little less. So for the phase and rise time stuff that I do, just because I'm using something like a Heathkit generator from like 1970. I did a video on it, and it works okay, but I wanted something newer that I could adjust the phase on, so I could figure out how much phase change some of the stuff that's showing on those tests I do. But it's fun. I get to interact, and sometimes I feel I actually help people. They may ask me about how to fix something, or suggestions, or they just like sharing about how they found this thing walking down this, in the alleyway or something. They found this, Macintosh amplifier there in the trash or whatever, and people like to share their stories, and then you get a chance to share that, or their dad had that amp, or sometimes people want to know what amps go with what speakers. Or there was one this morning, could this realistic amp handle these AR speakers if he doesn't play it loud? And sure, they will. There's that, but sometimes you get these really obtuse gear. Will it work with something? And I don't even know either of the pieces of gear, so not much help. But yes, I do enjoy the channel. I learn stuff, and when I get to fix something and troubleshoot, that is kind of challenging and fun for me. It's like a crossword puzzle, and so I do enjoy it. Occasionally, I get a rude comment. Somebody didn't like the way my microphone sounded, or he didn't like the intro because I was talking about the state of the channel, and for a minute, it was a certain episode maybe, but and then when you get into the speaker cable, which would be my viral video, that thing had a lot of comments, took a lot of time to respond, and I got a lot of some negative stuff, and people still comment on that kind of thing, or they don't like Carver gear or whatever. But so it's very fun, and so I do enjoy the channel. And one of my good buddies who gives me a lot of the gear, his name's Ian. He sells stuff on Craigslist. So if, he'll bring me something, and a lot of times he hasn't tested it in a long time. So, I may have to do a little repair to it. And then there's a video on it, and it helps him sell the gear. So he likes it. Would you say that vintage amps, that you really enjoy the channel? Okay. Well, if I didn't enjoy this, I wouldn't do it, or if I ran out of stuff. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys stopping by and commenting, so I don't have to talk to myself for a while. So, or just to myself. So the amplifiers, so I like the vintage gear. You just can't get it. But honestly, folks, the more I test, and if you look at the little, like where I tested the Marantz 8B classic tube amp versus the little, it was an IEMA TO8 Pro, $100 amp. And the upshot was, it was a flip of a coin with which is better. So new gear, the Class D amps sound really, really good. And unless you're, maybe if you had extremely revealing speakers, you might hear a difference. I still haven't experienced that. I think that it's kind of like a car. Like, I would much rather have a 63 Corvette, or any Corvette basically, than say a Prius, even though the Prius is going to have the digital screen and all this, stuff, or maybe even a Tesla. But just to have that, to see it, to sit in it, to smell it, there's that thing with vintage gear. And, that's kind of, my take is, if you like for certain things, the new stuff is just fine as far as the little amp. I'm thinking more little amps. But the old gear, is big and it's classic, and there's just something, from, most of my viewers, according to YouTube, are probably in the 50 to 65 age category, which is my age. So they grew up with this stuff. They can afford it now, or they, so they kind of want it, and it looks cool and it works. So, that's what it is. Hook up a streamer to it. So I think in a lot of stuff, the vintage stuff, the quality is really good on it. I guess that's maybe the point. The quality's pretty good. And let's see, Dan. Okay, Dan. Any preference in vintage brands? Not Macintosh. There's something about Marantz and certain Sansuis. They just have a look. Some of the Sansuis, like those 70-70, 80-80, those kind of things. Those have kind of a cool look, 90-90. And Marantz just has the standard Marantz. And I have a piece here that I did, a quad Marantz that I was lucky enough to get from Ian. And they just have that, the look is really cool. And Carver gear, for the most part, the amps, they work pretty well. Sometimes the capacitors they use in them, on like the cubes, they're designed to be plugged in, and maybe they're always on. I think the caps were out and some of that stuff. But Carver gear, from what the stuff I've measured, works really well, and to be able to put out the kind of power they do. So, Pioneer, I haven't had a lot of Pioneer gear to test. So the Sansui, I really like their integrated amps. I just finished measuring an AU 517 that will be on a video. And that's the AU integrated amps are really, really nice pieces of gear. Coffin Race comes from one of the outdoor activities, the annual Dead Guy, held in Estes Park, Colorado. It's a fun and unique event. Well, my wife worked up at the YMCA camp for several summers, up till about 2 years ago. And I'll have to ask her about that. She never mentioned it. But yeah, that's a pretty neat place. Yeah, she worked there. I guess you got a small stipend, and you worked up at the camp. Real pretty area. My family lives, son and daughter-in-law live in north of Denver, pretty much Denver, Thornton. And I have a brother that lives between Denver and Phoenix area. So I go to Denver. Where do I go? I go to Denver. I don't like traveling, but when I do, it's usually Denver. I don't think these small, you can't fix them anyhow. They're so cheap. I don't use them like as a regular amp. I use them in spurts, so they're not on. I don't have any clue. I don't know that they would last for 20 years. I'm thinking the little IEMAs, these, or the Fozzies, they're, anywhere from, $80 to maybe $200. But, they're, tomorrow's video is going to have a Fozzie amp in there, and you can kind of see the, how it performs. But if you listen to them in A/B testing with, you're not driving some AR9s that take a lot of current. And that's the key. If, these amps will work good for a lot of applications, but if you have a speaker hungry, or a speaker, and if you have a speaker that's hungry for power and needs an amplifier that can, drive it, then, then you got to be careful. But I'd say the majority of people don't have that situation. But yeah, I think that, I don't know. I'd say some of the vintage gear, a lot of it, I'm just surprised it's, 50 years old and it darn near meets all its specifications, and it had, they haven't had any work done on them. I think they just build them, whether they were built here or they were built, in Japan. When the old TVs, I had a TV repair business for a while, and you'd get the Mitsubishis and the Sonys in, and they just had a lot of quality in them, and they carried over to their audio gear. Dancing, you mentioned the Audio Club in Tucson. So, you live in Thornton. Yeah, I think my son sent me a, what is it? Something they were like the safest city in the United States or something like that. I think this past summer. Yeah, I wished I knew the intersection. There's a super Walmart across the street, and they're building a daycare center where they live in a new subdivision. I don't know the intersection. And I'll be out there in a month, less than a month, and I'm going to go to my favorite store for salsa, Lulu's Market, I think. So I'm going to load up on salsa. They have excellent salsa. So the Audio Club in Tucson, it's basically an unofficial club. It's so, like, my friend Ian knew a lot of people. I met Ian, and then Ian introduced me to Richard, and between the two of them, they know most of the audio folks in Tucson. And so we just kind of spread the word. There's no membership. There's maybe one or two people that don't fit the crowd, so they don't get invited to these. But we've done an A/B test. That seems to be a good way to get people together. And then, somebody might bring wine, somebody might bring water, somebody may bring beer, and then some food. Yeah. I'm laughing. Richard, bless his heart, he bought frozen pizza for the last event. That was kind of a little, it's just kind of funny, but he up the pizzas for the guys. So we had like 20, I think total of 25 or 26 people show up, and everybody has a good time. We have a nice room that we can set the stuff up in, and you saw a picture of it in the video. And that took all afternoon. It's a lot of work for me because I'm getting their responses. They have a questionnaire, and getting the digital audio player I use set back to the first track, and explaining how to use the remote. And when you're doing the A/B test, the thing is to make sure you don't move your head. I'm moving my head because it's at an odd angle from what the camera's normally at a lot. And just hit the remote, just hold it, don't move your head, and go between the two sources. And it's pretty easy to do. If you move your head just a little bit, you can try it on yourself. If you put like a a 1 kilohertz tone on and just listen to it and slightly move your head to, a different angle, and it changes a lot. So the big thing when you're doing the A/B test is to switch, and that's kind of how we do it. We're going to do a little different one the next time that doesn't use a remote. It's going to use a switch box with push buttons. So you just push a button. It's a mechanical switcher box, I guess, that is, it doesn't add any distortion, and it doesn't have any bad crosstalk between the channels. So that will be coming up, and I don't have the 2 pieces of gear. I usually don't tell people. I don't tell people what they're going to be listening between. So it kind of makes it fun. They just see if there's a difference that they hear. And I believe you have to do it, immediately between the, when you listen, you need to switch immediately. And if there's a big difference, you're going to hear it. And, that's the only way I think you can do stuff like that. And then ideally you'd like to do the ABX, where you compare A and B to X. So X is either A or B, but you try to guess which is, but you need to have special stuff to do that. And I don't have that with my switch box, but that would be a fun thing to do. So any other questions? Yeah. Well, if you have friends, Dan, back to your kind of thing, if you have friends, there's probably a couple people you may know, and you just, maybe they know somebody, and it's not like we go over to other people's homes and listen to their setup. It's not like that. We just have a get together, and it's always been like an A/B test, and everybody's liked it, like doing it. There's some, I think we had one comment last time, the guy, he heard something different than he was used to in one of his songs, because the speakers that we used had more bass than what he's used to, listening with. But that was really the only kind of goofy comment. And it wasn't really goofy. It's just, he noticed something different. So that's kind of it. I'm thinking, tomorrow will be a little bit different kind of a thing. So, and then there'll be a follow-up on that video. And I don't want to give it away yet, but at the end of the video, I talk about the next video following it. So it's kind of related to it. And anyway, I like to think of different, things. And then some of my friends go, hey, I got these speakers. I think they would be fun for you to do a video on. So I think I've got some ohm speakers of some sort, and that I may get to test. And speakers are just a quicker test. What's their impedance? What's their sound pressure? Frequency response in a single, axis. I don't have a fancy measurement system, and my room has its limitations. So the nice thing is, if I measure the speakers all in about the same spot, you can compare it to, say, another speaker like the ones I'm going to work on next. I can pull up the plot of my the Klipsch KG2s, which are a similar kind of speaker, and you can kind of compare them because they're measured in the same room. And the room has a suck out in it, a bass suck out. But anyway, that's kind of a fun thing that I like doing speakers every now and then. But I look for ideas for different things that one can do. Any more questions? Did I get all of them? Yeah, I do want to do one on capacitors, but I haven't hit that, where I look at, people say, oh, let's replace the capacitors on something. And because it's, 30 years old, oh, it needs new capacitors. Well, generally it doesn't. But I'm waiting for the right piece of gear to come in that I could do a before and after capacitor replacement, where the caps don't cost me an arm and a leg, and do that. I wanted to put in a plug for the Bob Carver for future testing. I own one and have the schematic. Super. Yeah, Bob put out. Yeah, he's just always been a fan of Carver. I've never had any of the Sunfire amps. I think those are mainly tube amps. I'm not sure. I know some of his stuff when Amir at Audio Science Review tested some of his stuff, and I don't know which ones. I think it was a newer Carver amp, and they measured really bad. But it doesn't mean that they don't work. But there were just some things about that people didn't like, and Carver. I'll call them fanboys, of which I am one. They get really sensitive to bad mouthing anything about Carver. But if you look at his work on stuff, it's just, he was like way ahead of his time. I guess he's still kicking. I don't know how much of the design part he's doing, but yeah, I wish if somebody had a Sunfire amp that they would give me to test. I would test it. Tell us more about your Wilsons. Okay, so let me have a little sip of coffee here. And if you didn't see it, here's my little Macintosh MC30 kit that they're mono, that they're right over there. And I made a coffee cup because I thought they were cool and I needed a new coffee cup. But so the Wilsons were my good friend, Richard, who's been in a few videos. He's very shy. I don't even think he's watched one of my videos, especially if he's in it. Nicest guy in the world. And he had them and brought them over for me to do a review on and just listen to them and see if I like them. And at that time, my wife was working at Estes Park for a long period of time. I think that was when she was there. And so she's gone, and they sat in front of my KEF 107 speakers, but I could listen to either one. And I just started listening to Wilsons, and my wife kind of didn't like the way they look because they're black lacquered. And these are two-piece. Originally, I think they came with just the Watt 3, which is the top part, and then they developed the Puppy 2 bass section. But they sit on top. You really don't know that they're two pieces different. Well, you can tell they look like two different pieces, but they didn't start out that way. Anyway, so he brought them over, and I had them for a couple months. And other than when they first came, my wife never asked for about 4 or 5 months, maybe at least 4 months. And so I figured that she never, when she come home, she never would bring up, oh, when is Richard gonna take the speakers back? So Richard made me a really good deal on them. And then probably after the 4th month, we'll say, my wife came back and she says, so when's Richard picking up the speaker or his speakers? And I said, well, they're our speakers now. So that's kind of how that came about. And I just really liked them. If you read the reviews on them, they had excellent reviews, and they're just a nice speaker. I think they were 17 grand a pair back in the 90s. And they're when you compare them to the KEF 107s, which I did, they have a tighter bass. I mean, I would call it tighter, but the 107s put out like more wall shaking kind of bass. And they're just a nice sounding speaker. I was just talking to a friend last night. It's nice to be able to switch between your KEFs and the Wilsons, like drinking a different wine. Maybe you want white wine or red wine or that kind of thing. And so for a while you listen to the Wilsons and then you listen to KEFs. Now when I do stuff for my videos, I listen to the Wilsons because they're more efficient, a couple dB, I think 3 dB more efficient than the KEFs. And they're a little bit more revealing, I would say. And people can't really, fault you for Wilson speakers. They do have a new pair of those, a new version out, apparently, of the Watt 3 speakers. I don't know, maybe they're Watt 3 Rev 2, but they're not probably speakers I get, but that's what I do. And then occasionally I listen to the Klipsch Scala, which you can't really tell, they're facing over here. And the Klipsch La Scala are more for tube amps or maybe amps that don't have a lot of power, because the Klipsch can sound very loud with about 3 watts. And it's a different sound, so it just depends. But that's kind of why I like the Wilson. I got a really good deal. My buddy Richard has he sold me a lot of gear. I should. I wished I were in a position to write the stuff off, but I'm not. But for the channel, you could say I could write off the speakers or the amplifiers or this or that. But I don't make that kind of money on the channel at all, and that's not my goal. I'm not. I always say just subscribe, because it gives me an indication that the stuff is still useful to people. And I do one video a week. I'm not going to do shorts. I mean, nothing. There's a lot of people that do that. I occasionally, like Fozzie gave me this amplifier that you'll see tomorrow. And so, I give them a shout out, but I'm not overly soliciting stuff from people, because most of the stuff is vintage. But occasionally it's nice to have something modern as well. My friends never seem to run out of things for me, so that's kind of the key. But yeah, I do like the Wilsons. You can't really tell in the back. There's 2 different speakers. One's an NHT and the other is a Energy, and one of them's for my surround system and the other one's for part of my quad system. So I have the Marantz I mentioned is a quad Marantz, and I did a review on that. And so I have 4 speakers for that all around the room, because it's quad, and I have a quad 8-track player as well. And I actually have several quad 8 tracks. You can still get them, and it's different to listen to that stuff. I mean, it's not high fidelity, but it's not bad. It's kind of fun. And then I just have a lot in this room. Maybe one day I'll show all the stuff. But anyway, that's kind of that. What kind of amplification? I missed the second part, Dan. The Wilsons, I would say probably, 30 watts to 100 is good for those. I have a 350 watt per channel Macintosh amp, which can kind of overdrive those a bit. But the Wilsons are fairly efficient. So when I test most things, I can get 90 dB SPLs in the room, which is a decent sized room, with the Wilsons on 30 watts. So I would say you would want something that's, I guess you could go down to 15. Some 15 watt amps do really well. It does come onto the stream, but what type of turntable use, if any? Yeah, I mentioned earlier, but I have 2 Pioneers. One of them's from like 1970. I think it's a PL50. It's belt drive. And I did buy a new cartridge. I don't use that very much. And then I have a Pioneer that's over here. It's a full manual, but a much newer one, like a PL620 or something. And then I have the Sansui linear tracking turntable. And there's a video on it. I didn't own it at the time, but I got it back. And that's very nice. The way it works, and it sounds just fine. And then I have if I'm going to want to test a receiver's phono section or preamp's phono section, I have a Technics, I believe it's a SLD2. It's a linear tracking one. It's pretty heavy that I use, and it's another linear tracking turntable that I use as well. And that sometimes I don't do a lot of listening to the phono sections, but occasionally I'm curious about it. And so I'll use that one as well. But I'm not, I'm not going to invest a lot of money in a turntable. I mean, there is a difference in the sound if you listen to the CD versus an LP of the same thing. I think maybe people prefer the turntable sound a lot of times. It seems like it's a little warmer for whatever the reason is, but you still have pops and clicks and a little bit of hiss, that kind of thing. You got to get up and change the record over and clean the record. So it has all those rituals, which were good. That's what we did growing up. But I don't have a preference to belt or direct drive. I would say direct drive is better, because if your belt wears out and it turns all gooey, if you had it setting for a while, then you got to clean that off, and then you got to find a belt. So as far as sound, I don't know. I think they sound okay. Invest in a cartridge that's $50-$60. I don't know that you would hear a big difference, at least with the records. Most of my records are from 1970s to early 80s, when I probably stopped collecting them, although I bought a few recently that were like new, some high fidelity ones. Some more music I don't listen to, but they were like $1 each for a master recording. So and they maybe hadn't even been played in some cases. So it's fun to listen to records every now and then. But I don't have a preference for a turntable. I mean, Pioneer, Marantz, Techniques, that kind of thing, they're all pretty good. I guess there's some new ones they sell. I know Skylabs Audio has a brand that seems quite reasonable, new stuff. So if you like some of the vintage, I guess that's great. I'm not a moving coil kind of a guy. So I think moving magnets are just fine for most people. But it's cool to listen to a record. Like I listened to the last one that actually some friends came over to pick up something this week, is AU 517, and they wanted to listen to the Wilsons, and I pulled out the Dire Straits, probably their first LP, and we played that on the linear tracking turntable, and they sounded fine. Thanks for your response. I'm running a Pink Triangle. Blue Sound. I'm familiar with Blue Sound nodes, but I don't know Pink Triangle decks. I'm not familiar with them or Lenco. It sounds more high end than what I deal with, because, like I said, most of my stuff is vintage, and the people have some really nice turntables that some of my friends, but I don't know what they're running as far as separate. They're not running any expensive preamps. I do know that. So I'm not sure what the Pink Triangles are. And Elenco, I've heard of that brand, but and Blue Sound's a streamer. Yeah, I said I have the Wim Mini, and it seems to work just fine for me. And I subscribe to the high def Amazon Music, which is, they have a pretty good library. They've had probably 98% of what I've searched for the music, and the quality's, the high definition is at least CD quality. The other thing that I recently, maybe 6 months ago, is there is a program that allows you to record high quality music. It's Audios Music. They do other things, but it works in it. It records real time. You're not downloading it, but it's you can record as a WAV or a FLAC file I've been using, and it works really well. It's like you were recording from a record, so you can't, like I said, you don't download, so it's one-to-one time, but you can make really good quality copies. And I've actually downloaded a file from them, and I compared it to the RIP CD file, WAV file that I had, and there was very, very little difference, at least electrically, when you compare the data from them. So, but I've been very happy with that. So that's been a nice thing, that Audio's music recorder, and I think you can find it for like $20, and you can, if you're streaming, that's great, but sometimes you want to maybe take it in your car. You're not streaming in your car, or if there's tracks I want to use for A/B testing, that kind of thing. It's nice to have the actual hard copy media. What else? We're on for at least 12 people. Yeah, for me, that's a good turnout. Any other questions? I mean, when I hit 5,000 subscribers, so that's probably, it looks like I'm averaging a little over 100 subscribers a month. So I would say, I think I'm at 4,200. So when I hit 5,000, that's when I would schedule another one. I'm hoping to do a live stream with the Skylabs, Kevin, at some point. We had mentioned it, and that's a real good channel too. Skylabs, they do a lot about vintage gear, and he's really good at what he talks about. But yeah, I said I'm a lot about data, and there's Amir does from Audio Science Review. He's like the best at doing data, taking measurements. I know that some of the stuff is doesn't mean a lot, but at least I try to I do put chapter breaks between different data. So if I have like THD at 5 watts, you could just look at the thing real quickly. You don't have to listen to my voice necessarily. Sometimes I try to add a little humor when I can, but then you could jump over to the frequency response. So that does take a bit of time when I'm putting the videos together to put the little chapters in, and so that you could kind of skip through it. And like I said, I've been trying to follow a basic kind of format with which measurements and the tour and all that, and that just helps me spend the minimum time trying to put together videos, because it does take a while to do the measurements and then put together the segments you need for the videos. And like I said, I do it because it's kind of fun, but I kind of found this format after doing this to where it's a little bit easier for me to do the video per week thing. Like I've got probably the next 3 videos already uploaded. They're scheduled to come out sometime on Sunday morning, and it's easier for me to do that, so I don't have to spend as much time. I can do some other things. I'm not feeling as pressured to do a video. That's my own thing. I just do a video per week. It makes it, I think, good. I'm not overloading. There's people I get overloaded with some the channels I've subscribed to. Can I ask your favorite albums? Sure. Somebody actually asked my test tracks. It's like my wife asking me what my favorite color is or favorite food. I could eat pizza every day. I could eat tacos every day. I mean, there's certain foods I could probably eat every day. As far as records, I do like some, Dire Straits, their first album. I love Diana Krall. I couldn't, now with streaming, I kind of put, when I say I record, like I said, using the audios, and I'll record Diana Krall several albums, and it's just under a folder called Diana Krall. So these days it's harder for me to have like a favorite album. Like Heart Magic Man is really good for cranking up when you want to just listen to that. There's some Boss Skaggs stuff, or War. There's some War, like Galaxy. I couldn't tell you the albums necessarily, other than like Heart Magic Man. The first, I think it was the first Dire Straits album with Sultans of Swing on it. Is real nice. And they're usually in Steely Dan, just about anything from Steely Dan. The reason why I like them is a lot of it is just, well, Heart's maybe a little bit different. It brings out a lot of the sound, like the Steely Dan, just the spectrum. You get bass, you get vocals, you get just different sounds, going on. The Take 5, Dave Brubeck, that album, especially that song, I really like. That's a really good one. Henry Mancini, some of his stuff, particularly the Pink Panther theme, is really good for, like, I'm going more into the test track, but and there's I grew up in the disco age, so I still like disco. And in fact, one of my test tracks is a disco song, Pouzez, Poussezz or something like that. And I like some of their music. Oh, one song, it's kind of risque. And I like that. It's sometimes that bass. I mean, there's some stuff from Michael Jackson, like the Thriller album has a lot of good stuff on it. So it kind of just varies. I listen to, there was something, I got a list from this club I'm in. They put out a list of weird music, and I have it right here. And I've been going through stuff I wouldn't even like, but I at least would find out. And there was the Mavericks was kind of nice. One of the it's kind of like a country rock kind of thing. That was a surprise. But there's stuff here. There's just Triumvirate. I've heard of them, but it sounded like crap. I just a lot of things I didn't care for. I will pull them up, and after 5 seconds, I can tell you if it's something I would listen to. But I listen to everything. And I like when I stream, I often am streaming more mellow music, some jazz, or just some female vocalist, male vocalist kind of stuff. Just background. When I want to get the juices up, I'll probably put on hits from the disco days. And actually, I have a playlist that's like that. Just it gets you moving, makes you want to dance, kind of thing. And well, it'll come out in the video proper. Off the Wall is a great album for disco, but MJ is a bit of a no-no. Huh? How is he a bit of a no-no? Just because he did that? Yeah, I don't like Daft Punk, Random Access. I'm not sure that's. I did listen to, I like the B-52s. I mean, but the Daft Punk, I'm not. If I wouldn't know a song, maybe if I heard it, I don't know Random Access, or maybe that's Random Access is their album. Off the Wall, Thriller. In fact, I'm looking at I'll hold up my cassette. You can't really see that probably very well. It's hard to. Anyway, this is a tape that was made probably in 1980, 79. I usually have a date on there. And so I do play my cassette takes, actually in the Bose 901 system. I have a Pioneer CTF. It's a 900 with the nice floor scan meters and all that. And I do play my old tapes from, this was probably 1980, maybe, I'm guessing 79, 80. And it was Michael Jackson. So I think that was from that album. Anyway, I'm going through the songs that are on this thing, and I'm making a playlist on Amazon, the music streamer thing, and then I'll record it. So, and then I'm going to burn it on a CD, just because the tape quality is. I was recording from records, and they were records that were played in the disco or the nightclub disco that I DJ'd at. So they're already in bad shape. But anyway, one of my little projects. I don't know. Michael, he was fascinating. I mean, I liked a lot of his music. A punt. You may. All right. So Random Access, is that Daft Punk? I will pull that up. I'm going to write it down. Daft Punk. I'll guess. So that should be on Amazon. Okay. I will check And if I remember, I will mention it in a video, although maybe not, because I probably will forget. When I do the videos, it's hard to remember what I want to say, if you can imagine that. And I will definitely look at Daft Punk. I'm familiar with the group, but like I said, I couldn't tell you one of their songs. But I did like some of that new age that came out, like we called it new age around 81. Like I would say the start of it is kind of like B-52s and David Byrne. What are your thoughts on MoFi audio press? I think you're talking about mobile fidelity, Jake. I'm from the era when there were mobile fidelity. And there was some scandal, I guess, where they were digitizing it and saying it was a direct analog master kind of a thing. I don't have any real problem with it. I'm sure they did a good job making their recordings. I know there was a big stink, if that's the thing. I mean, if you get audio channels feeds on your YouTube channel, you would have got a lot of stuff about people talking about that. I didn't have any problem. I haven't bought any of their records since 1980. I have maybe, I think Heart was a mobile fidelity. The Magic Man that I bought, I only bought a few, and that was I bought Heart, Magic Man, and I think I bought Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, of course, and I still have both those. I think those were mobile fidelity from 40 years ago, 40-some years ago. So yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I don't even, people are going, oh, something was auto-tuned. I don't care. If it sounds good to me, I care less. If just what it's, what sounds good to you. I just like things that just sound clear. That's why I like Steely Dan, whether it's, like Morph the Cat's a favorite song of mine, or, A19, or just, I think they just did a great job. I don't know what all they did as far as recording, but to me, it just sounds clean and good. And you get a full range. And I love Diana Krall. Boss Skaggs is pretty good with a lot of his stuff. But yeah, I will listen to Daft Punk. I'm curious. So, but with actual musicians, they're not electronics. Oh, yeah, I'm not a musician. I just, things sound good to me, or they don't. I don't care if it's, if the guy was creating a piano with an electronic piano or a regular piano, I wouldn't know. If it's a drum machine or not, I wouldn't know. It just sounds real good, or it doesn't. I don't get that critical on how they put it together. Probably because I'm not a musician. I don't play an instrument. I could play a few little songs on harmonica when you followed the little arrows a long time ago, but no musical bones in my body. Just I mix, like if when you DJ and you mix, so I still practice mixing disco songs for fun and make them into a CD every now and then. But I couldn't tell you anything about it, whether it's a real musician or not. I'm not really a purist in any sense of that form. It's like tone controls. People want no tone controls. And I'm somebody who wants tone controls. I like to be able to adjust things a little bit, but just different people have different opinions. And that the same people will talk about having this room treatment software, which is going to digitize their music and then add the corrections, in a digital domain, and then spit it back out analog. But yet they're the same people who don't want to have tone controls. Anyway, anything else we got? We still have, 9 people. Thank you for the questions. It started off kind of slow, but yeah, I wished I had some more take on the musician thing. Now, my son, I do have one son who's a musician, but it was more classical jazz kind of music. Nobody sings in the family, that kind of deal. Anyway, what else? I'm not sure I have anything. If somebody, yeah, yeah, it's too bad. Maybe one day I'll do maybe the next one I'll do a little, I'll move the camera around and show you the Clips La Scala system over there. And whatever's set up, I got a new amplifier, which I'll be doing a review on at some point. Or it's vintage. It's, 44 years old, I guess. So it's new to me. And it's my latest collection. I'm not really in the market for much audio gear, maybe some speakers at one point, or sometimes you'll see something that you really want, an equalizer, or some piece of gear that you wished you had back when you were a teenager or young adult, maybe. So, proper 90s. Okay, so yeah, I don't know that Michael Jackson is still thought of as a pervert so much. I think he's kind of just, they don't really talk about it much other than his music. If you watch some of his stuff, it's really amazing. He's really talented. It's amazingly talented, but a bit weird. So what we got? We're at it. Hour 16. I'm going to cut off at 1:20. I don't really have any timing, but if we don't have any more questions, I think we did a pretty good job. But they're mainly, you're in the UK. I thank you. I mean, it's got to be, it's like 10 o'clock at night or something like that. I appreciate you tuning in. So La Scalas are amazing speakers. I think they're very efficient. Mine I've had, and there's a video on them, a review on them, and they're all original. And to me, they sound really good for most music, maybe. If you listen to classical, I don't know. I don't really hardly ever listen to classical tracks, but I think that the La Scalas are a great speaker. Nowadays, they're going to be, the new La Scala are more expensive and that kind of thing. I'll get to the Kef, but the other ones, here's a little bit of a sleeper La Scala, or a sleeper Klipsch, and they don't have horns, or the KG series. So I have KG2s. There's a video on them, and I've talked to my good buddy Ian, and he doesn't like the Klipsch horn speakers, but he's always liked the KG2 speakers that aren't a horn. So look for KG speakers. KG2s are a nice speaker. I think they have a very nice sound. I was listening to them more regularly, and then I got the Bose 901s with on the pedestal stand, and I got the equalizer, and so I put the Klipsch speakers up, and I still listen to them, but they're more in my workroom where I'd shoot my videos at, and they're kind of above, so they're for more testing kind of speakers. But the KG2s, I've heard the Cornwalls and the Heresies, and I'm used to the La Scalas, so they didn't do anything for me. But the KG2s are a nice speaker. If you could, there's other, I think they're up to KG4, but that might be something you could find. Now you got to make sure that the surrounds are all intact, but they're pretty good. Hopefully you can find one. So tell us about the Kef speakers compared to the Wilsons. I did a little bit earlier, but the Kefs, and those are from England. I call it England, UK. I don't know what the proper thing is, but England, I guess, British. They have a tighter bass on the Kef, on the Wilsons, but the Kefs, the 107s can take as much power pretty much as I can throw at them. And they don't get like extremely loud, kind of. It's kind of a different thing. I mean, they're loud, but they're not like loud like the La Scala loud that I have. Those can get a little bit more, I'll call it a little bit shrill if you get playing certain kinds of music. But the Kefs are kind of smooth, more kind of warm. The Wilsons are just a bit, I would say detailed, maybe just have a little bit better on the high end, and the bass is tighter. And by that, I mean, if you just, it just seems like it's, I just tight is the word that I describe, where the Kefs are more going to rattle your chair a little bit more. Neither one of them you need a subwoofer with, but in the Kefs, I have the cube for it. I am trying to sell the Kefs. I want to, like, because they're kind of in front or behind the Wilsons, kind of. Not the Wilsons don't totally block them, but there's probably a little blocking going on. They're a little bit shorter, and the Kefs are a really nice speaker. They were extremely highly regarded if you look at the reviews on them. But they're different. I think if I had to keep one, I would keep the Wilsons, and eventually maybe I would get something different. I would love to have the Klipsch Jubilees. Kefs Bright. No, I would not say these. I'm not. Definitely the Kefs I have are not bright. I would say La Scalas could be on the bright side. I'm not sure what the Pro ACS is. But the Wilsons, compared to Wilsons, I would say they're just a little bit warmer than the Wilsons. Warmer means maybe more on the bass side, a little bit more on the bass side. But the Wilsons, they're both really good speakers. It's like I said, I switch between them now. I have that Neo Hippo AB speaker amp switcher. I finally got one and was able to connect it to the Macintosh so I can switch between the speakers, because they have different ohm settings, and the Macintosh amp has taps for 2, 4, and 8 ohms. So rather than bend over underneath the TV set and plug in the banana jacks to the speakers that I want to use, now I can just use the switcher and just switch them. It was a lot of work. You had to make 8 pairs of 3-foot speaker wire banana jacks, and then 2 more, another pair of speaker wires. So anyway, yeah, both. My buddy Ian has some Tenoys, and then Richard, my other buddy, has Tenoys. I mean, they sound okay. I'm not. I couldn't tell the model. They're both vintage, that I know. And they sound okay. They're not like the speakers that made a big impression on me, I guess. But yeah, I've heard both of them. But the Tenoys I haven't listened to. My friend Richard has, and they're kind of probably an odd one with the coloring of them. I forgot what model. It's just maybe kind of how he had them set up. They were behind, or the piano was in front of it, so it wasn't the best setup. And now I'm not sure where he moved him to at his house. He's moved him somewhere, and I hadn't listened to him, but I mean, they sounded okay. The speakers that have made impressions on me, I do like the Altec Model 19s. My buddy Ian had a pair. He just sold them last week, and I would have bought them, but I'm not getting rid of my La Scalas, and I physically don't have room in my house without doing major remodeling of couches and that kind of thing. But I've always liked the Altec 19s. The JBL 250 Ti's, when the woofer was fixed, I did the research or the video on that, and he got those fixed, and they were used in the A/B test, and those are a very nice sounding speaker, I think, vintage. The Martin Logan CLX. I've heard those in my friend John's system, and those sound real. They're very detailed speaker. And then I heard these Fennell, I forget the model number, and they're kind of just coming into the States. And they're an electrostatic single panel thing, and they sounded really good, except for a very detailed, very good sounding speaker. And I listened to their top of the line, which I think is 25K, and then the next one down, which might be 10K. And those sounded really good. They don't have that low bass, but it was in a huge room, high ceiling, and 2-story home, and the ceiling was high, and so the bass was not as good as it would be in a normal room. I've also I heard the PS Audio 30s in their showroom, and those sounded good. Things that stand out. I mean, the other ones I kind of like were we used them for an A/B test, or the Macintosh XRT 18s. They're kind of an odd speaker, and they sounded pretty good. And I found out that I think the phone, they needed to be refoamed, part of it. So those were a nice sounding speaker. The Bose 901s, for what they are, for just like a general purpose speaker, are pretty nice, believe it or not. I've always been a fan of the Bose stuff, but these, I mean, they're not going to be your reference speaker, what I call reference speaker, like the Wilsons would be, but for like, they're kind of in my kitchen area, so if I'm working in the kitchen, I can have them on, and it sounds really good. So that no, his Model 19s were in a normal family room, and they would sound, I think if you were they would overwhelm a small room, but in a medium-sized room, what you can fit them, because they're really big, but they don't need any, they're like little Scalas. They need very little power. They have a very nice sound to them. But my friend Ian that had those, I guess the guy just came up from Phoenix last week and bought them. And he's bought a pair of these Fennell speakers. And so he's unloading some of his gear. You'd have to look at episode number 5, which was one of my early episodes, I think, where I interview Ian. So if you want to see those speakers, you can look in his room, and it's changed a little bit, but he still has a lot of stuff. 2 valve. Now we're getting some, okay. So I own a pair of Macintosh MC30 monoblock amps. They're tube from the 60s. And I got them because my buddy Richard made me a good deal on them. So, and they look cool. And here's my honest opinion on the tube stuff. And my A-being with preamps and solid state listening, immediate switch between the two things. Very, very little difference. When I will probably listen to the MC30s tonight, I'll turn them on and let them warm up for 15, 20 minutes. And then I'm going to put on a record just for, but they glow. So you get the tubes glowing. There's something, just, dim the lights or turn off the lights in this room and just listen. I honestly think there's no magic with the tube stuff, regardless of what people say. But when I've done testing, whether it's the power amps or the preamps, I don't hear any difference. I don't think I would buy a tube preamp. What's my reasoning? People say, oh, we'll do the tube preamp and then the tube solid state amp, or a solid state amp for the power amp. I don't know. I guess you could do the tube preamp. I mean, the shit Freya Plus has ability to go solid state or tube, but tubes wear out. If you want to do it, I mean, it's part of the hobby. But if you're looking for something vintage and you want tube, then either one, I guess. I said as far as it's something if you like I just like the look of the Macintosh MC30, which hold up my coffee cup here. These guys right here, and they sound good. They're like 30 watts a channel, but did they sound better than my solid state amp? No. And we did there's a video on that where we did a A/B test, and you really couldn't hear the difference between the two. It's if it's something that if there's a tube amp that you wanted, that like a vintage piece of gear, maybe it could be a new one, maybe you wanted a tube thing, but my opinion is you probably won't hear a difference between them. If between a tube preamp, solid state preamp, Val, so you must be, I think you said you're over in England. Yes, you're in the UK. Been torn. It gets to level. Yeah, you can. Well, I mean, you can get some of my videos get kind of long because of what I do. Especially an upcoming video is going to talk about using the analyzer, and that's more for the crowd that owns the analyzer. But you can always fast forward just to go from see what the measurement was. It's what you want, and what it costs. There's with tube stuff, you're running at higher voltages, more possibilities for things to go wrong. Maybe the tubes age out. So I don't know, but there's also the aesthetics. It looks cool, that kind of thing. People sometimes people walk into my house and they'll look over and see the Macintosh amp sitting there and go, "What's that?" My wife loves saying, "Oh, those are stereo gear," because she likes knowing something that somebody else does not. But there's something to glow at tubes. But as far as overall sound, my opinion is they're not harsher, and I've tested tube preamps that don't have the even harmonic situation going on. So it just kind of depends. A lot of times they're a little bit noisier, the power supply when you look at it, but it's down pretty low. So if they did a real good job on the design. But yeah, just get something what you want. If you want I'll give you a steal on it if you can find them over there. And you don't need a remote. Would be the Carver C1. That thing measures really well, and it has a lot of features on it. It's if you need a motorized volume control, there's a video where you could hook one up in your tape monitor circuit or something and use it to control the volume. But the Carver C1 is, you can get those on eBay for probably a couple $100, and it has a lot of capability. You'd want to make sure it was, tested. They do have a moving coil stage and a moving magnet input as well, and that has the sonicalography. So if you're looking for a preamp, you want something vintage, that's one I would recommend. And anything Macintosh, tube or not. But yeah, it just depends. If you want a nice, vintage tube preamp, go for it. I'm hoping to do a review on a tube preamp. Yeah. Thank you, Proper's 90. I don't, there was a time when I wanted to go overseas, but those those days are probably long gone. I don't like traveling as much, but I never made it to England. I was over in Europe, but not to England. Yeah, driving on the other side of the road or just experiencing that would be a little odd for somebody who's used to it. Anyway, I think we're probably, 134. I think unless there's one more question, I have 9 people that's showing. 8 likes, so that's pretty good. I'm gonna Scotland. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I think they wanted to separate them. I can't. I don't know. It's different. There's Scotland and Ireland, and all you guys are over there. At least you speak a form of English that I would recognize. Yeah, but yeah, if I go somewhere, it's Denver, Colorado. That seems to be it. Maybe I'll go stateside somewhere. But thanks for the chat. I can look forward to more. Okay, Dan. Yep. So I'm going to call it a afternoon or night, depending on where you're at, and I will hopefully have some kind of prize I can offer next time. And like I said, if I'm getting 100 to, I'll say as much as 150 subscribers a month, it'll probably be 4 or 5 months. So we'll look forward to that. And until then, how do I say? Yeah, we'll have a good day or night until then. And then check out the video tomorrow. Hopefully you'll leave a comment on that.